In this video, we're going to talk about a scam, a parody project that evolved into something more, and an upcoming podcast featuring myself and Callum Upton. If you've been following news on the MMORPG genre or the general Kickstarter scam gaming landscape, you've probably heard about Dreamworld, but for anyone unfamiliar, here's a really quick breakdown. Kickstarter is a website where people pitch ideas at you, and if you believe in them, you can support them by pledging money, and if a project's pledge goal is reached, all the money is then released to the project owner and they can begin creating whatever it is they say they're going to create. Unfortunately, this has led to many con artists promising to make wild and outlandish things for extremely low prices, and naive and gullible people are being deceived by the incredulous pitches. This ends up with people, often children, donating money to projects that are never ever going to succeed. Now, one major subgenre of these con projects are video games, specifically for some reason MMORPG games. Now, MMORPG players have been crying out for the one perfect game for many years, and newer or more naive players do think the singular best MMO could exist, and con men have been taking advantage of this for some time. Now, some projects do become legitimate games like Albion Online, but others are just straight up impossible lies like Dreamworld. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Josh Strife-Hayes. If you've been watching any of the MMORPG YouTubers, myself, Kira TV, Lazy Peon, Callum Upton, Skiazos, MMO Byte, you're probably clued up on how the whole Dreamworld situation is going. The last game you'll ever play, an absolute insane scam of an MMORPG. A game developed by two people who had never developed essentially anything as far as video games go in their entire life. They were using the Y Combinator investment agency, and then it was discovered they had family ties to it. It was this whole big drama thing. The Dreamworld drama was fantastic, and it captivated YouTube for a long time. But there is the small chance that something positive may have actually come out of this whole Dreamworld shenanigan, and that is Nightmare World. Before we dive into what Nightmare World is, consider dropping a like on this video or subscribing to the channel. Ring the bell for all the future notifications. As usual, a massive thank you to the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel alive. More on how you can support at the end. For now, let's begin. When I made my very first video on Dreamworld, there were a few other YouTubers who had already covered it. Kira TV had a fantastic video out, and I think MMO Byte knew of it, but had chosen to not give it any extra advertising, a stance I can respect. But I found one smaller YouTuber with a detailed call-out video, Callum Upton. Callum was a developer, and he'd watched the Dreamworld trailer and then hunted down the exact asset packs it had used, up to and including the pirate ship level they were using as a major environmental selling point. That was literally just a store-bought asset pack. Even the camera fly-through in the trailer was the pre-programmed tutorial level fly-through that came with the demo. Callum ripped the trailer apart, so I reached out to Callum and we worked closely on the next few videos. Callum got into the Dreamworld Discord, got access to an alpha build of the game, got an access alpha key, and was able to get some of the first footage of this insane mess of a game, if you could even call it that. It was more of a sandbox of assets at the time. Callum wasn't alone in his criticism of the project. Dreamworld supporter turned critic Skiazos also made several videos questioning the authenticity of whether this project was ever actually going to exist or not. And then the fanboys started to say, don't critique something unless you can do better. You can't review something unless you can make something better. And I've got a bit of a problem. I take umbrage with this statement because you don't necessarily need to be able to make something better yourself to have an opinion or review it. You don't need to build and own a hotel to review what staying in a hotel for a night is like. You don't need to be able to sing beautifully to judge or critique a song. Other people, of course, will look at your ability, your skill within that industry, and work out how much value your opinion actually has. Anyone can critique anything for any reason. It's up to other people to work out how much value they place on that person's critique. So everyone was saying to Callum, if you can do better, do better. And Callum said, okay. If Dreamworld was going to be awful, then maybe Nightmare World would be good. Callum set about gathering a team of people, from developers to artists to various specialties of coders, and eventually work on Nightmare World begun. A dark fantasy, small-scale MMO inspired by Victorian London, steampunk and diesel punk. Everyone on the team actually watched Carnival Row and agreed that is the kind of atmosphere we want to go for. Nightmare World wasn't aiming to change the world or dominate the industry. It was aiming to do two simple things: exist and be fun. So with work underway, I caught up with Callum while he was Twitch streaming the current developer build of the game. It's extremely early days, but I asked a few questions. Remember, this is very, very early in the project, but the fact that they've got anything is already impressive. So let's just ask. So we're going to chat about the podcast later on, because that's going to be a thing that's definitely happening, and I think people in the chat are going to be interested in hearing where that's going to. But for now, what is Nightmare World?
Right. Okay. So to sum it up as simply as possible, it's a indie MMO that's based on a Victorian dark fantasy, and that's the simplest form of it. It's going to have a lot of the things that you'd expect from an MMO. You know, the core mechanics, but we plan on doing crafting and many other things differently. We want to avoid as much UI as possible, and just let the player. I think UI can take away a lot of fun from MMOs. If you're in a crafting screen and you're just pressing a button and that's you crafting a legendary weapon, it feels like a bit of a cop-out, and it feels like a waste of a good system that could have been there. So that's kind of the motto we're going with for almost every system.
So we're going with kind of Victorian London. When people think of retro stuff like that, they kind of think of steampunk. Steampunk is one of the words that comes to people's mind first, but steampunk is not the only punk. You've also got diesel punk when you're looking at the train age, and you've even got atom punk when it goes all the way through to the kind of the 1970s, 1980s visions of the future with Flash Gordon or Judge Dredd, things like that. Yeah.
So we're planning to have slight steampunk elements, like very light steampunk. It's not going to be a big part of it, but we're also not just looking to have it with, you know, what's the kind of usual trope? Just lots of cogs on everything. Just stick
glue some gears on it and call it steampunk.
Yeah, cogs and gears, it'll be steampunk. We're trying to avoid that, but we do want very light steampunk elements at least. Right, okay, so obviously I started out on YouTube covering the whole Dreamworld topic. As, you know, when it began, everyone was calling it out for being a scam, just people being incompetent, and we weren't entirely sure which one it was. So I covered it from day one up until now, and I got a lot of people, the more time went on, that just kept saying, don't mock it if you can't do it. And this is a theme that a comment that I kept seeing pop up over and over. And I hate that kind of, that tone where it's, you know, you're mocking something that is quite clearly not right. But, you know, if you can't do it, don't mock it. So after that, I sat down with a team of people in my Discord who had been following along with it too. They'd been helping me out with some loose elements for the videos as I was making them, and we were all just like, do you think we could do it better? And the first thing we did was, let's just make everything Dreamworld's done, but in 8 days. So we did. We made the building system, the terrain system, everything in 8 days. And after that, people were just like, you should make an actual... Well, no, in fact, after that, people were saying, oh yeah, but you can't make it an MMO. Well, me knowing full well that we've got people that are very capable of doing that, I hate to be told that I can't do something. So I sat down, I was like, right, is everyone in this for the long run? Because it's going to be a lot of fun, even if it goes nowhere. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. So a team of about 7 of us maybe, started out on day one. And that's kind of how it's got to now. We've just been ploughing along month after month. I think it's been 2.5 months now. And we've just been working away on it, and it's been getting closer and closer to what we're after day by day.
Because what I can see on the screen right now is I can see that you're controlling an avatar producing a 3D building, but there's also a player in the distance, Dazalius. That's proof that you've got multiplayer working, which is something most of these Kickstarter games don't do. I mean, this isn't Kickstarter, but it's a very telling sign that most of these up-and-coming games claim to be multiplayer, and that's the first thing they fail to be able to do. You've got it working.
Yes, in fact, multiplayer was almost the first thing we did, because we know that's the biggest hurdle. And I said this in a recent video. If you're making a multiplayer, a Kickstarter game, and multiplayer is one of your stretch goals, you've already failed. Because if multiplayer isn't in there from day one, You can't just add it. It's not a click of a fingers thing. You have to reprogram everything to work with it. A lot of people think it's a checkbox or something. It's not. You fundamentally program it a different way. So from day one, we set out to make it multiplayer. I think it was like day 4 after we'd got the smithing and building system working. We ported it over to multiplayer code, and then went from there. And that's how everyone should do it, honestly, because it's almost impossible to do it the other way.
So it's not just a case of going to File in the top left, clicking a drop-down menu, then going to Multiplayer, Add,
I wish.
MMO.
I wish it was.
Choose latency, average, and then it adds it in. It's not just a case of doing that.
It's not, unfortunately. I really wish it was, but it's not. It's not difficult. I want to put that out there. It's not difficult if you know what you're doing and if you do it in the correct way.
Nightmare World is a project born of spite, tenacity, and an intense desire to be able to say, I told you so. Real, actual, talented, skilled developers don't really like it that much when people with no talent, no skill, and no training come along and say they can do their job better. Actually making a game or producing any kind of content takes years of hard work, failure, trial and error, an incredibly tenacious, unstoppable development attitude. So when someone comes along with no experience and says, hey, if you give me all the money, I can make a better game than anyone else can in a shorter time frame, that is seen as a personal and professional insult to many of the talented and skilled developers out there. Nightmare World is a response to that insult. It's important to remember the current team of Nightmare World aren't being paid despite being professionals in their chosen area. They're driven by a desire to show what can be done, to leave a little mark on history, and some of them already have very prestigious careers behind them. Scam games are often amateur developers taking advantage of desperate players, promising the world and giving nothing back. This is the opposite. It's professional developers promising very little, doing as much as they can, and trying to give players something for nothing. Nightmare World is a long way from being alpha ready, but it's got a team of people who are definitely capable of delivering a smaller scale, fun experience with the potential for expansion in the future. But this isn't the only important update in this video. A while ago, Callum held a 24-hour Twitch stream raising money for charity, and I swung by to chat for a bit, and people seemed to enjoy the atmosphere of us just talking casually. We talked about MMOs, scam games, life, the universe, and everything else. And people said we should start an MMO-based podcast. So we are. Mondays on Twitch, 8 PM UK time, Callum and myself will be chatting about MMOs for a few hours, each week a different question, game or design idea, with live chat from all of you included and reacted to. But if you can't watch live because you don't use Twitch, don't worry. Every weekly episode will also be uploaded to YouTube and all major podcast hosting sites, so you can listen whenever you want. We've even commissioned an artist, the fantastic Dapio Art from Twitter, to make us some awesome looking avatars. And don't worry, I'll still be releasing the short MMO opinion videos and the worst MMO ever series as usual. This is extra. So, Nightmare World is a project that has gathered a very impressive team behind it and aims to create a small but incredibly high-quality MMORPG experience just to be able to show that it is possible to do if you aim at a realistic goal within a realistic time frame. And the podcast between myself and Callum Upton is going to be a Monday Twitch thing with videos uploaded to YouTube afterwards where we talk about MMORPGs and scam games in general, the past, the present and the future. It would be great to see all of you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on Twitch sometime. Another massive thank you to the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel going. You can support from only £1 a month. Check the video description for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter and our Discord. And as always, have a great day.